in the Division of General Education at Ashford University. And I also want to introduce Lindsay Hamburg, who is a guest speaker with both Connie and Cindy. And Lindsay is an enrollment services advisor. The chat room will be open during the session for your questions and comments, as well as a short Q&A at the end of the session. And here are Connie and Cindy. Thanks, ladies.
Before we begin, we'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to attend our TLC presentation. By doing so, you are demonstrating your commitment to our Ashford learners. Instructional feedback has a vital impact on student development, satisfaction, and ultimately enrollment. We appreciate your presence, your interest, and your hard work. Let's start with a poll to better understand our audience today. Could we slide the poll over, please? Jill?
Yeah, we're getting it over.
Okay.
It
Whoops. All right. So, would you please select where what best identifies you? Wonderful. Okay, it looks like we have a nice mix, and we could go ahead and maybe give it just a few seconds and then broadcast the results so everyone can see. We're good to go. All right, thank you very much for identifying yourself. I'm glad to see that we have a nice mix. Let's move on. We can end this poll. All right. My name is Cindy Combs, and Dr. Connie Lauer and I are both full-time off-site faculty for Entry Point learners. We primarily teach student success orientation, EXE 105, and Psych 202. Connie and I have many years' experience in K-12 education as classroom teachers and administrators, and together we have 18 years' experience working with Ashford learners. Along with Lindsay Hamburg, Enrollment Services Advisor, who you'll meet in a bit later in the presentation, we would like to discuss student perception of instructional feedback. Please feel free to add your comments or questions in the chat as we value your insight and your ideas. As instructors, we all wonder from time to time about the importance and effectiveness of feedback. A review of the literature shows a strong correlation between student satisfaction and student perception of our engagement with them and with their classmates. Doctors Myers, Richardson, and Swan in separate studies found that student perception of how quickly faculty engages, along with rapport established, impacts student learning. This was found to be true regardless of modality. Students are more invested in their learning when they view their instructors as caring and encouraging. Obviously, this is just a brief snippet of the literature available on effectiveness of feedback, but we wanted to take just a second to bring it to your attention. Let me turn it over to Connie, who will spend the next few minutes delving deeper into feedback and its impact. Connie?
Okay, where do we provide feedback? The majority of time you spend in your classroom is focused on preparing feedback of some type. We read and write to assess and evaluate student work. Feedback is posted in announcements as summaries of student accomplishments and improvements needed from the previous week. In discussion forums, we engage, advise, suggest, and offer expertise to enhance student understanding. In Ask Your Instructor, we assist, encourage, and explain. For discussion grading feedback, we praise, correct, suggest, and explain grading. Writing assignment grading involves writing personalized summaries, explaining grading, correcting errors and misconceptions, and encouraging improvement. We point to specific areas in documents and papers with embedded feedback. And in journal grading, we summarize content and offer affirmation and expertise. And I have a poll for you to consider. If we can move the poll over. In which area do you believe you spend more of your time preparing and writing feedback? I'll give you a minute to record your answers. Thank you, everybody who participated. It does depend on the type of courses you teach. We teach, Cindy and I teach courses that aren't particularly heavy in the writing assignment area, and so we probably provide more feedback and discussion forums, but those who teach writing would have more feedback in those areas. The purpose of feedback differs from discussion responses to grading comments. However, both involve responding with individualized student content-specific dialogue. Did you know you can review how many minutes you are spending in different areas of the classroom by clicking on Gradebook, then User Activity, followed by a click on the numeral corresponding to the week? Student times are posted there also. We all do a great job with our feedback. We praise, encourage, recommend, advise, and explain. We want to help our students improve. However, as we are writing, it is natural to wonder whether students will read our in-depth efforts. When I coach instructors or have a conversation about an instructional quality review, a discussion invariably pops up about the interest students have in reading anything we write. Do they really care? To answer these questions, I'd like to share with you a study carried out by Turnitin, the company that gives us the program we use to discover plagiarism. In September of last year, Turnitin conducted a survey of over 2,000 students in order to examine their perception of instructor feedback. They also surveyed 100 educators to compare their thoughts of what the students would say about feedback. The survey's primary purpose was to identify what students generally think about the feedback they receive on their assignments. The survey was also interested in identifying the formats and types of feedback students consider to be most effective. Out of the 2,401 respondents, over 58% of the students identified themselves as attending bachelor's programs, 39% were in graduate programs, and 3% were in high school programs. Granted, the population of students and instructors surveyed was relatively small. However, the results can be assumed to be representative of the general population, and we have another poll to pull over. Fact or fiction? Students don't read the comments about their work. What do you think? Interesting changes as the poll progressed. Thank you for weighing in on that statement. Okay, you can pull the poll back. Fact, 70% of students find feedback very or extremely effective. I will admit to personally being taken somewhat aback with this result. I'm motivated to provide abundant feedback, as I'm sure all of you do. However, in the back of my mind, I have questioned whether my comments are ever read. The survey says that they are. 70% of 2,400 students confirm they are reading our feedback. As you can see from the slide, however, there's a disconnect between those students and educators, as only 39% of educators think typed comments are very or extremely effective. If any of us are among the 61% who don't think our feedback is worth the effort, we are going to find it difficult to energize ourselves to provide it. The Turnitin survey says it is worth our effort, and students are learning and growing from it. This slide encourages us to think creatively about another fact that the survey revealed. Students find face-to-face feedback very effective, as do educators. However, only 30% report receiving that type of feedback. So our future challenge as online instructors is to consider how we could use technology to provide feedback that simulates face-to-face interaction. Voice feedback might eventually address this student preference when the technology is established to make it work for everyone, everywhere. And time for another poll. Fact or fiction? Students just want to be commended on their work. Thank you. You are spot on there. Okay, pull the poll back. Fact. Students rank suggestions for improvement as the most helpful type of feedback. followed closely by specific notes written in the margins. Specific notes written in the margins illustrates the value of embedding comments in the waypoint document and papers. Students ranked feedback limited to either praise or discouragement as the least effective type of feedback. Discouraging students strongly limits their motivation to persevere. Praise should be given, but it should not be extravagant or unjustly earned. In other words, praise, followed by suggestions for improvement, followed by encouragement, is most effective in reaching students. The students ranked the type of feedback they found most effective. The top 4 were suggestions for improvement, specific notes in margins, using criteria or rubrics, and the use of examples. Consider whether you are including all of these types in your feedback and to what extent. And one more poll. Fact or fiction? Educators and students don't always agree in their perception of what constitutes effective feedback. Thank you. Let's see the results. I'll pull the poll over. The fact is there's a wide gap in perceived effectiveness. In all the categories shown, general overall comments, specific notes in margins, showing mistakes, showing what was right, making suggestions for improvement, and using criteria or rubrics, educators feel feedback is less effective than do students. This presentation hopefully reinforces the value of your feedback to our students and gives you encouragement to continue with your efforts. The nights and weekends you spend typing responses and comments is meaningful and worthwhile for our students. What gives feedback value? Students want feedback that engages them. It has to be relational and individual. It has to address their interest in the topic. Gets them to think harder about the task. Here's where critical thinking questions are useful. Encourages them to make specific changes. Suggestions should be specific to the student as opposed to general suggestions. Helps them receive good grades. For example, suggesting they write more detailed answers. Helps them know how to avoid mistakes in the future. Suggest using Grammarly or spell check or perusing the Ashford Writing Center for writing improvement. Gives them a better understanding of what makes for high-quality work, such as suggesting how the information in the text could be used to reinforce their ideas. Motivates them to learn more about the subject, for example, providing links for good resources. Is timely. Post feedback throughout the learning week as required. It indicates you care about their progress. Be timely and personal with your feedback. Be present and be encouraging. As Ashford confirmation of the Turnitin research, Enrollment Services Advisor Lindsay Hamburg, our guest presenter, is going to spend a few minutes describing the commentary she receives from students concerning the importance of getting instructor feedback. She is on the front line of the battle to bring a college learning experience to our students. She hears their stories every day. She's an Ashford student herself, and she is passionate about assisting underserved students achieve success. Lindsay?
Some instructors get frustrated with student questions and believe students are not following instructions. I understand as I work closely with them in preparation for class. I try to help my students to employ critical thinking skills and to follow all of the directions. There are many students that work hard and care about their education. It can be difficult for them to independently decipher information, and it becomes more challenging as instructors are not willing to elaborate on the information and provide instruction. Without instructor interaction, feedback, and input, Ashford courses are not any different than the way correspondence schools function. As a student myself, I experience both sides of the spectrum, and I know that my frustration level decreases and my engagement and knowledge increases when I had instructors who were highly engaging and provided significant feedback. Students appreciate teacher feedback, which ultimately leads to greater student confidence, a higher level of engagement, as well as overall better student experience. There will always be students who aren't extremely engaged, though for every student who is not, there is a student who is very dedicated. And it is that student who's missing out on what could have been a more valuable learning experience if they were to receive instructor feedback.
Thank you, Lindsay. Lindsay noted that students consistently comment on the level of teacher involvement in the discussion forum. When students receive feedback from their instructor in the discussion forum, they are excited. When they do not receive any response from their teacher, they are equally disappointed. Students tell her they rush to Waypoint to read comments, often to find none. If you are an associate or full-time instructor, you receive an end-of-course survey several weeks after completing each class. The institution-wide percentages for the 3 instructor feedback questions on this survey were made available for this presentation. The instructor's feedback aligns with his communicated expectations. Are you providing students with information concerning late submission, length of discussion responses, quality of responses in terms of writing mechanics, content-related answers, and research requirements? The chart indicates that almost 89% of the EOCS respondents agree or strongly agree, which is to be celebrated. However, over 11% strongly disagree, or have no opinion. We don't want to settle for 11% in those categories. Instructor feedback is the glue that holds the class together and keeps students connected, motivated, and interested. The instructor provides feedback in a timely manner. Over 12% didn't feel they could agree or strongly agree that instructors respond to their work within a time frame that they expect or that assists them with their work. There shouldn't be any students who have this experience, as timeliness relates directly to keeping students informed, advising them of improvements needed, and encouraging their retention at Ashford. The instructor provides useful feedback for improving students' quality of work. Again, 87% in the strongly agree and agree categories could be considered good, and it is laudable. However, 87% is a grade of B. We are an A university. Students want to know how to improve and grow. They realize how much of their life is riding on the degree they wish to attain. If they are given good, solid, specific feedback on improving their work, they have a greater opportunity to reach their goals. Now Cindy is going to illustrate feedback that meets these 3 criteria.
As previously shared, as instructors, the majority of our feedback at Ashford is in emails, Ask Your Instructor forum, discussion forum, and assignment feedback. Let's take a moment to look at this example of exemplary feedback. As you can see, the step 1 is to acknowledge the learner by name and set the stage for the feedback. This faculty provides positive comments, is encouraging. She uses the student's words to support and provide personalized suggestions. In this example, the instructor continues to teach by asking guiding questions, providing learner-specific feedback, and offering her support. This is an excellent example of an instructor respecting, supporting, and guiding the learner. I know you don't have time to read it all, but I have a yellow light. Okay. In this example of stellar discussion forum grading, the instructor addresses the learner by name, takes time to focus the learner back to the specific content being reviewed, which is very important, or we find that it's very important with entry point learners. The instructor breaks down the rubric into specific sections. She spends more time reflecting specifically on the content provided by the learner. She reteaches via questioning. This instructor gives the learner an opportunity to improve her grade. While this is not an Ashford requirement, it does show the student that the instructor wants her to have a solid understanding of the content. This instructor uses grading as a teachable moment. She provides exceptional organization, mechanics feedback. This faculty gives the student an example of one mechanics error using commas to set off non-essential elements and offers to provide the student with a detailed markup. Copy of her post to help the learner improve her grammar and mechanics. Please note the instructor puts the request for this information back on the learner. Will the learner request the detailed feedback? That's to be found out. The instructor continues with with peer review feedback and an abbreviated form of the rubric. Okay. All right, giving empowering feedback. As instructors, we have the responsibility to provide our learners with empowering feedback. Our feedback should support the learner. Our timing is important. Sooner is always better than later. We want to be supporting but specific in our feedback. Ensure that the learner understands, offer to help, offer to explain, be encouraging, talk about what the learner did well in addition to how he can improve. Increase learners' accountability. An excellent example is the instructor offering to provide a detailed markup of the student's paper if requested. Always think about your tone and how your feedback is delivered. Remember to be you. You want your students to connect with you. While not all students will take the time to read our feedback, this is a perfect example of this, or to tell us about our feedback. This is a perfect example of the impact our feedback does have. An example of what we do, why we do it. As you take just a second and read Nicholas's email to Dr. Lauer. Okay. Connie, Lindsay, and I would like to thank you for taking time and spending it with us today. We appreciate what you do for our students. Your dedication and commitment to learning is what makes Ashford University a great university. If you have any questions, we'd love to be able to discuss them with you. Please feel free to reach out to us, and we want you to have a wonderful day. And I think Connie is going to post our email addresses. So thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Connie, Cindy, and Lindsay. We have a minute or two if there's any questions. You guys want to post them in the chat section at this time? While they're typing, I want to thank again Connie, Cindy, and Lindsay for your presentation, as well as all of you for attending. This presentation will be available for viewing in the CETL soon, and we will send out an email when the live sessions are available. Don't forget to go to the TLC app and rate this session. Use the link in the room for a quick end-of-session survey. If you see that at the bottom of the slide, you can click on there for a quick survey. And then we will also be sending an end-of-conference survey to provide more in-depth feedback, and looking forward to that information from all of you. Thanks again so much for your presentation, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.